His wife divorced him after her company signed a $100 million contract. What he did next crushed her. Sign the papers, Cole. You and I are done. I need a man who can make me fly higher, not one who will drag me backward. Those were the last words Claire Bennett said to her husband the night her company landed a $100 million contract. She had no idea that the man she just dismissed as a failure was the invisible force behind her entire empire. What happened next will make you question everything you think you know about love, betrayal, marriage, and revenge. Viewers, what would you do if your spouse humiliated you and served you divorce papers on their victory night? Drop your thoughts in the comments. The ballroom at the Grand Meridian was carved from glass and ego. Chandeliers shimmered like frozen lightning above the crowd of corporate elites who had gathered to witness history, the signing of a $100 million contract between Clarion Beauty Tech and Northbridge Logistics. Reporters clustered near the stage, cameras already trained on the woman of the hour, Claire Anderson, flawless in a crimson gown that whispered wealth with every step. She was the face of ambition, the symbol of self-made success, and beside her, in a simple black suit, stood her husband, Cole Anderson, the man no one noticed. The master of ceremonies lifted the mic. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for Mrs. Claire Anderson and her husband, Mr. Cole Anderson, as they stepped forward to sign the deal of the decade. The crowd cheered. Cole rose from his seat, pride soft in his eyes. He buttoned his jacket, brushed his cufflinks, and started toward the stage, toward his wife, his quiet smile carrying the kind of joy that didn't need cameras. But halfway up the steps, Claire turned sharply. The room stilled. "No," she said, her voice slicing through the music. "Cole, you don't need to come up here." He froze. 100 faces turned. The echo of her words bounced across the marble. "Claire," he said quietly, "they called for both of us." She laughed. That cold, practiced laugh that belongs to people who forgot where they started. "You and I cannot be together, Cole. Look around you. This," she gestured toward the hall filled with executives and investors, "this is my world now. I'm at the peak of my career. I need someone who can fly beside me, not someone who'll drag me back to the ground." Whispers rippled through the crowd. Diane Ford, her PR manager, looked down at her tablet as if she could hide inside it. Cole's face didn't move, but his eyes dimmed, just slightly, like a light losing current. Claire stepped closer, lowering her voice only enough for the front rows to hear. "You're a logistics clerk, Cole. You live a small life. You think too small. I can't build a future with someone afraid of the sky." Then with a smooth motion, she reached into her clutch and pulled out a white envelope. She slammed it against his chest. "Sign it," she said. "Those are our divorce papers. You and I are finished." The sound of the envelope hitting his suit was small, but it echoed louder than any applause. Cole stood still. He looked at her, not in anger, but in something deeper. Disbelief mixed with heartbreak. He adjusted his tie, nodded once, and whispered, "If that's what you want." Then he took the envelope, turned, and walked through the silent crowd. Every step he took was slow, deliberate, heavy, like a man walking out of the last chapter of a book he'd written alone. Behind him, Claire smiled for the cameras. The sound of applause still echoed behind him as he stepped out into the cold night. The hotel's golden doors shut, muffling the laughter inside, laughter that used to belong to both of them. Cole walked to his car without looking back. The parking lot lights glared off the hood of his black sedan as he unlocked it, climbed in, and sat still for a long moment. His hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white. Inside, his reflection stared back from the dark windshield, the same face she'd called pathetic. The same man she once said was her anchor, now just a shadow she'd stepped over on her way up. He turned the key. The engine hummed, quiet and steady, like him. The city lights blurred past as he drove, his face calm but hollow, every heartbeat pulsing with her words. "You and I cannot be together. You're nothing but a failure." They echoed with every mile. At a red light, he caught his own reflection in the rearview mirror, The plain suit, the calm eyes. The disguise had worked too well. He'd built an empire behind silence, and now even his own wife couldn't see it. He exhaled slowly. Maybe that was the point. When he reached the house, he didn't turn on the lights. He walked straight into his study, locked the door, and sank into the leather chair before his computer. The room glowed with faint blue light as the screens came alive, and with it came the memories. He saw her again, years earlier, sitting at their dining table with her head in her hands, notebooks scattered everywhere. She'd been crying that night. "Cole, I'm done," she'd said, voice shaking. "Every investor ghosted me. Nobody believes in my idea." He'd walked to her side and placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then let's make them believe." She'd looked up, eyes red. "How?" "Go online. Tell your story. Show them what you can do. Maybe someone out there will see your worth." She'd frowned. "And if they don't?" He'd smiled. That soft, steady smile she once loved. "They will just give it a try." That night, when she went to bed, Cole stayed up. He'd contacted 5 partners, men he trusted, men who owed him favors, and told them to invest when they saw her pitch online. He'd even wired money himself through an anonymous shell company under the name Haven Equity, just to make the momentum look real. Within weeks, she had what she called miracles. Investors lined up. Her company, Clarion Beauty Tech, was born, on the back of his quiet strategy. Now, sitting in that same chair a year later, he stared at the old investment folders still saved on his drive. She had no idea the empire she was celebrating tonight was built by the man she'd just destroyed in public. The night stretched deep and quiet around the house, but Cole's mind refused to rest. The echo of her words wouldn't leave him. He sat there in the dark study, the glow of his monitors tracing lines across his face as fragments of the past broke through the silence like cracks in glass. He remembered when the space between them had first begun. Back then, Claire had been softer. She used to wait up for him after long shifts, coffee steaming on the counter, eyes full of questions about his day. She used to smile when he came through the door, not glance at him like a stranger walking past. It had started small. One morning she stopped asking if he wanted breakfast, then she stopped coming home before midnight. When he'd ask where she was, she'd wave it off. Networking, Cole. That's how real people grow. Real people. He'd been the fake one, apparently. Too simple, too still. He opened the divorce papers, go through it with mechanical precision before signing. Back at the signing ceremony, the applause had only just begun to fade when Claire straightened under the lights, her face composed into the perfect public smile. Cameras kept flashing. She lifted her chin higher, pretending she didn't feel the hole that Cole's quiet exit had left behind. The host, trying to smooth over the awkwardness, cleared his throat. "And joining us tonight," he announced, "is one of the visionaries of the tech industry, Mr. Jason Miles, CEO of Hendrix Global, a close associate of Mrs. Anderson." A murmur swept the hall as Jason rose from his seat near the front. His tuxedo gleamed black under the chandeliers, his cufflinks catching the light like tiny suns. He walked to the podium with a confidence that filled every gap Cole's absence had left. Claire turned toward him, her lips curving into something bold, defiant. "Jason," she said into the microphone, "is the kind of partner who understands the future I'm building. Someone who knows how to fly at my altitude." A ripple of surprise moved through the crowd. The investors, the reporters, even the anchor froze. But Jason only smiled, sliding his arm lightly around her waist. "Mrs. Anderson's brilliance speaks for itself," he said smoothly. "At Hendrix Global, we recognize leadership when we see it." The audience erupted into awkward applause. A few glances were exchanged. A few cameras caught the moment. The subtle claim, the unspoken confession. Claire basked in it. She wanted everyone to see. She wanted the whole world to know she had traded the man who walked away for the man who could keep up. As the banquet wound down, champagne was poured again. Jason leaned close to her ear. "The night's young," he murmured. "Come celebrate properly." She hesitated for half a breath, then nodded. Let's go. They left through the side corridor together, flashes following them to the door. Her PR manager, Diane Ford, watched from across the hall, expression unreadable. Outside, Jason's car waited, black and sleek against the curb. He opened the door for her with a small bow. After tonight, the city will know who you really belong beside. Claire laughed softly, stepping in. Then drive. The door closed, muffling the last echoes of the banquet. Inside the hotel, staff began clearing the tables, the red carpet already littered with confetti and forgotten glasses. A month after, the courtroom smelled of polished wood and quiet judgment. The ceiling fans hummed lazily, stirring the faint perfume of expensive suits and bitter endings. Claire sat at the petitioner's table in a navy blazer, her posture perfect, her expression unreadable. Cole sat across from her, his face calm, the same mask he'd worn the day she destroyed him in public. The judge cleared his throat, flipping through the final pages of the file. Mrs. Anderson, he said, you're requesting dissolution of marriage on grounds of irreconcilable differences? Yes, Your Honor, she said without hesitation. Do you seek spousal support, division of assets, or alimony? Her answer was quick. No, Your Honor. My company is worth over $200 million. I'm doing more than fine. The words echoed in the quiet chamber. Even the clerk looked up briefly, surprised. Cole didn't react. He only folded his hands on the table, eyes steady on hers. The judge nodded slowly. And you, Mr. Anderson, contesting any part of the petition? No, Your Honor, Cole replied softly. The gavel struck once, sharp and final. Then this court hereby grants the dissolution of marriage between Claire Anderson and Cole Anderson, effective immediately. The sound of that gavel was small, but in Cole's chest it felt like thunder rolling through a canyon. Claire stood quickly, gathering her purse and documents with a snap of movement that said she'd been ready for this all along. As she turned to leave, the judge's voice stopped her. Mrs. Anderson, he said, for someone in your position, you're choosing to walk away from a lot. She gave a brief, cool smile. Your Honor, you can't lose what never had value. The judge frowned, but said nothing more. Outside, the afternoon sun poured down like gold on marble. Cameras waited, flashing, eager for sound bites. Claire stepped out first, adjusting her sunglasses. A journalist called out, Mrs. Anderson, any comment on the divorce? She smiled faintly. Some things hold you back before you realize they do. I'm free now. That's all that matters. The microphone surged forward, but she moved past them effortlessly, sliding into the back seat of a black car already waiting at the curb. Inside sat Jason Miles. He leaned toward her with that smug grin that had replaced love in her life. It's official, then? He asked. It's done, she said, exhaling slowly. Finally. Jason's hand slid over hers. Then welcome to the top, Claire. You're where you belong now. She leaned back against the leather seat, closing her eyes for a moment. She didn't notice Cole standing far behind the crowd, a silent figure at the edge of the courthouse steps. He watched her car pull away, his face unreadable. A passing breeze lifted the edges of the divorce decree still in his hand. For her, the story was over. For him, it was only beginning. He folded the papers once, tucked them into his jacket pocket, and walked away into the glare of the sun, quietly, deliberately, like a man carrying fire in his silence. The courthouse steps were still crowded with reporters when Cole turned the corner and disappeared into his car. He didn't drive to their old house. He went straight to the downtown tower no one knew he owned, a 40-story building with a different name on every floor. He rode the elevator to the top, the kind of quiet ride that let thoughts grow sharp. When the door slid open, his private office waited. Floor-to-ceiling glass, polished marble desk, 3 screens already alive with numbers. The world thought Northbridge Logistics belonged to a faceless board of directors. In truth, it belonged to him. He removed his jacket, hung it on the chair, and laid the signed divorce decree beside the $100 million contract. 2 pieces of paper. One ended love. One would end illusion. Cole pressed the intercom. "Hannah," he said evenly, "get me full performance reports on Clarion Beauty Tech's new contract. Everything from production to delivery schedules. I want it tonight." "Yes, sir," came the voice of a woman who'd worked for him 10 years and knew what tonight meant. He stared at the skyline, her skyline. Every billboard with her face on it. Every ad that called her self-made. She had no idea the servers running her supply chain sat in his buildings, that the trucks carrying her products bore licenses he issued. When the files arrived an hour later, he opened them one by one. Line items scrolled past his eyes like confession slips. Inflated invoices, mislabeled raw materials, late shipments Jason Miles had pushed through to hide cost-cutting. Cole leaned back, expression unreadable. "So that's the kind of wings you're flying with," he muttered. He clicked open a private terminal, typed 3 commands, and locked Clarion's quality assurance clearance pending executive verification. It would take the audit department less than 12 hours to notice. And when they did, every transaction she'd bragged about would freeze under review. He didn't gloat. He simply adjusted his tie and whispered, "Actions have echoes." Across town, Claire sat in Jason's penthouse, barefoot on polished floors, sipping champagne. The city stretched beneath them like a promise. Jason scrolled through his phone. "Tomorrow, Northbridge releases the second transfer. After that, we're untouchable." She smiled, lazy and proud. Finally, everything's stable. Neither of them noticed the small email that blinked into Jason's inbox from Northbridge Audit Dept, Priority 1, Clarion Contract Review Notice. Claire leaned over to kiss him. "To freedom," she said softly. "To the future," he answered. Outside, the city lights burned bright, unaware they were already flickering. And miles away, Cole closed his laptop, the faintest smile touching his lips. The first domino had just fallen. The first call came just after dawn. Claire's assistant's voice was trembling on the other end of the line. "They're freezing the funds, ma'am. Northbridge just issued an audit notice. The compliance team said they found irregularities in the materials report." Claire sat up in bed, heart pounding. Jason stirred beside her, half asleep, half annoyed. "What's going on?" he mumbled. She covered the phone. "They're auditing the contract. Something about fake materials." Jason rubbed his temples. "These things happen. It's a routine check. Don't panic." But panic was already creeping in. Claire ended the call, opened her laptop, and logged into Clarion's corporate dashboard. Red alerts blinked across the top. Payment hold pending review, shipment delay notice, contract integrity violation. She scrolled faster, throat dry. "This can't be happening," she whispered. Jason poured himself coffee, his calm deliberate, the way men acted when they didn't have to fix the mess themselves. "You're overreacting. We'll have our lawyers talk to their board. It's probably a paperwork glitch." She nodded, trying to believe him. But deep down, a cold thought pressed at her ribs. Cole had worked for a logistics company, Northbridge Logistics. No, he couldn't have this kind of reach. Could he? By noon, Bloom Street Financial broke the story. Northbridge Logistics suspends a $100 million deal with Clarion Beauty Tech, pending investigation. Sources claim inconsistencies in supply chain documentation. Investors withdraw confidence. The headlines spread like wildfire. Stock prices dipped by afternoon. Reporters camped outside her office building. Cameras waited, hungry for tears or arrogance. Either would sell. Claire stood in front of the mirror in her office, fixing her hair, steadying her breathing. "I can handle this," she said under her breath. Jason entered, looking uneasy for the first time. "We just lost 2 investors. They pulled their capital this morning. They're scared of the audit." "Call them," she said quickly. "Tell them everything's under control." "I tried," They won't take my calls. Her phone rang again, her CFO this time. They froze the operational account, Claire. We can't make payroll, and the suppliers are threatening to pull out if we don't clear invoices by Friday. Her stomach dropped. That's impossible. We're liquid. Not anymore, the CFO said quietly. The banks are reevaluating credit lines because of the investigation. She hung up before the explanation finished. The walls felt closer now, the light harsher. Jason's voice came low, defensive. Maybe if you'd let me handle the back end. She spun toward him. You were handling it. This is your job. He met her fury with silence, then walked out without another word. Across town, Cole sat in his office reading the same headlines on a muted television. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. He turned the screen off, leaned back and murmured, You said you didn't need someone who'd drag you down, Claire. I just made sure you understood what falling really means. Outside, the city kept moving, unaware it was watching the beginning of her collapse. By the third week, the spiral was no longer private. The Wall Tribune ran a front-page story titled, Clarion Beauty Tech Faces Financial Meltdown. Television anchors repeated her name with the slow sympathy reserved for tragedies that sell advertising. Every hour brought a new headline, every headline a new wound. In the Clarion headquarters, the lobby that once smelled of orchids and money now reeked of sweat and panic. Employees whispered in clusters, their voices sharp and frightened. Claire marched through them in a white suit that did nothing to hide the exhaustion under her eyes. She slammed open the boardroom door. Why are the investors still pulling out? She demanded. We released a statement. Her CFO didn't look up from the spreadsheet. Northbridge terminated the contract completely this morning. They're requesting refund of $43 million already paid. Legal says we don't have it. Claire's pulse thundered in her ears. That's impossible, Jason said. He also said he'd handle the audit, the CFO interrupted, sliding a folder toward her. Turns out every discrepancy came from Hendricks Global's end. He falsified compliance documents. The board wants him gone. For a long moment she couldn't breathe. The folder sat in front of her like an accusation carved on paper. Across town, at Hendricks Global, the mood was no better. Jason paced his glass office while his attorney spoke in a tone that made excuses sound like obituaries. Clarion's collapse triggered a domino. The SEC's investigating your supply contracts. Investors withdrew 90% of their capital this morning. Unless you find a buyer within the week, bankruptcy is inevitable. Jason turned toward the window, jaw tight. There has to be someone willing to take both companies, merge the debts, restructure the assets. The attorney hesitated. There is interest from a firm called Greyhaven Capital, anonymous ownership, but they have the liquidity to absorb both. Jason didn't recognize the name. He nodded slowly. Set it up. That night, Claire sat alone in her dark office. The city outside looked cold, unfeeling. The champagne bottle from her victory banquet still stood on the shelf, half full and stale. She picked it up, stared at the label, and laughed once, bitter and small. The door opened without a knock. Jason walked in, his suit wrinkled, his confidence gone. Greyhaven Capital wants to buy us out, he said flatly. They'll take both Clarion and Hendricks, pay off the debts, and keep operations running. It's the only way to avoid total bankruptcy. Claire swallowed hard. Sell everything I built? He met her eyes. It's either that, or lose it to liquidation. We signed the deal Friday. She looked past him to the skyline glowing through the glass, every light a reminder of the empire she'd believed was hers. The same skyline Cole had watched from his own window. Fine, she whispered. Set the meeting. Jason exhaled in relief and left. When the door closed, Claire pressed her hands to her face. For the first time since the banquet, she wished she could call her husband, just to hear calm in a world collapsing around her. But the man she'd called a failure had vanished, leaving only silence, and the faint sense that someone somewhere was orchestrating her ruin note by note. Friday came dressed in gray rain intention. The glass conference room at the Midtown Hilton was silent except for the soft hum of the projector waiting to display the final numbers. Claire Bennett sat at one end of the long table, her hands clasped tightly in front of her, every ring and bracelet a reminder of what pride used to feel like. Jason Miles sat beside her, his confidence thinned to a polite mask. Their lawyers whispered in the corner, their voices dry and practical. This wasn't a rescue, it was a sale. Across from them sat the representatives of Greyhaven Capital, 5 men and women in dark suits, their folders marked only with the silver emblem of the firm. None of them spoke much. They were the kind of people who moved money, not mouths. The chair at the head of the table remained empty. Claire's attorney leaned toward the lead representative. "Before we proceed, will the principal be joining us? My client would like to meet the buyer personally." The man smiled faintly. "He'll be here." The doors opened. Footsteps echoed across the marble floor, steady, unhurried, familiar. Claire looked up, her breath catching before she understood why. The man walking toward the table wore a tailored navy suit, his tie knotted cleanly, his expression unreadable. Cole Anderson stopped at the head of the table, placed a single folder in front of him, and looked up. He didn't look at her at first. He looked at the documents, signed his name once, then looked up. "Miss Bennett," he said evenly, "thank you for meeting with me." Her voice stumbled. "Cole, what are you doing here?" Jason glanced between them, confusion darkening his face. "You two know each other?" Cole's eyes flicked toward him. "Intimately, she's my ex-wife." The silence that followed was heavy enough to bow the ceiling. Cole continued, tone calm, almost polite. "Greyhaven Capital has agreed to purchase the assets of both Clarion Beauty Tech and Hendrix Global. Effective immediately, all holdings, intellectual property, and subsidiaries will be consolidated under my management." He turned the page, his voice steady. "You'll both retain no controlling interest. The debts will be absorbed. The companies, however, are mine." Jason started to speak, but Cole's gaze stopped him cold. "You may want to check the contracts before protesting. Your legal team's already approved the terms yesterday." Claire's throat tightened. You bought us?" He finally looked at her fully, the softness gone, only truth left. "No. I reclaimed what I built." She felt the words strike deeper than any insult ever could. The room around her blurred. Reporters waiting outside would never hear this part of the story, but she would never forget it. Cole closed the folder, rose slowly, and said quietly, "You told me you needed someone who could fly with you. You just never asked who built the wings." Then he turned and walked out, leaving her staring at the papers that bore his signature, papers that marked the end of her empire and the beginning of his reign. The moment the doors closed behind him, the air inside the conference room turned heavy, as if the walls themselves had absorbed the weight of her shame. Claire couldn't look up. The faint buzz of rain outside seemed to echo in her ears, each drop a reminder that the man she once dismissed as beneath her had just bought everything she'd built. Jason stood abruptly, his chair screeching against the floor. "You knew," he hissed. "You knew he was behind this." She looked up, face pale. "Jason, I swear, I didn't know." He laughed, sharp and humorless. "You think anyone will believe that? You paraded him around as a nobody while he owned half the damn industry. You destroyed us both." "Us?" Her voice cracked. "You forged the compliance documents, because you asked me to save your company," he snapped. "You wanted shortcuts and I gave them to you." The room went quiet again. Their lawyers began collecting papers, pretending not to hear. One of Greyhaven's representatives stepped forward politely. "If you'll excuse us, Miss Bennett, our team needs to finalize the handover procedures." Claire nodded numbly. Jason grabbed his briefcase and stormed out, slamming the door so hard the sound lingered. When it finally faded, she sat there alone. Just her, the rain, and the memory of a man she'd humiliated in front of the world. That evening, headlines erupted. Greyhaven Capital acquires Clarion Beauty Tech and Hendrix Global in billion-dollar buyout. Anonymous CEO revealed as Cole Anderson, former husband of Claire Bennett. Every network ran the story. News anchors replayed footage of the contract signing where she'd thrown divorce papers at him. The same line played again and again. "You are nothing but a pathetic failure." Clips from the banquet trended online. People dissected her words, her tone, her arrogance. Comment sections turned into public trial courts. He played the long game. Respect. She built her castle on a man's foundation and called it hers. This is karma wrapped in a business suit. By midnight, Clarion's social media pages were flooded with backlash. Sponsors withdrew. Magazines pulled her from next month's covers. She shut her laptop and sat in darkness, her reflection faint in the window. Makeup streaked, hair undone, the face of someone who'd finally run out of mirrors. Somewhere across town, Cole stood on the balcony of his penthouse, the same city view they used to share, now belonging to him alone. The wind was cold, but it felt honest. He wasn't angry anymore. Revenge had done its work. His phone vibrated once, an unknown number. He almost ignored it, but answered anyway. "Cole." Her voice came softly, hesitant, like she was afraid of her own breath. He said nothing. "Can we meet?" she asked. "Please, just once, I need to say something." After a long pause, he said quietly, "There's nothing left to say, Claire." "Just 5 minutes," she pleaded. "Please." Silence stretched between them. Then, "Tomorrow, 10 a.m., Clarion headquarters, for the last time." The next morning, she arrived early. The building no longer bore her name. The new sign above the entrance read, Greyhaven Clarion, sleek, metallic, final. Cole arrived moments later. He looked the same, only sharper, like a truth revealed after years of disguise. She rose as he entered the room, her voice barely a whisper. "You really owned it all, didn't you?" "I told you once," he said calmly, "I don't need applause to feel seen." Tears welled in her eyes. "I was wrong about you. I was so—" He cut her off gently. "No, you were just honest about who you were. You wanted the world, and I wanted you. We both got what we deserved." She stepped closer, desperate now. "I didn't love Jason. I thought I wanted power, but it's nothing without peace. I see that now. I just wish—" He met her gaze for the first time in months. "You wish you'd stayed?" He looked away toward the city skyline. She nodded, tears spilling freely. He looked away toward the city skyline and said quietly, "Some lessons only come after the curtain falls." Then he turned toward the door. "Take care, Claire." "Cole," she called after him, voice breaking. "Do you still hate me?" He paused, his hand on the doorframe. "No," he said softly. "I stopped caring the moment you thought I wasn't worth loving." And with that, he left her standing in the boardroom that used to be hers, surrounded by the ghosts of her own ambition. Do you think Claire deserves a second chance? Drop your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to like and subscribe for more interesting and true-to-life stories.